Let me ask you something that sounds simple, but is actually one of the most misunderstood questions in all of finance. Where does money come from? Not in a philosophical sense, in a practical, literal sense. When a bank approves your loan application and deposits $300,000 into your account for a mortgage, where did that $300,000 come from? Most people assume the bank had $300,000 sitting in a vault somewhere, that a previous depositor put that money in, and the bank is now lending it out to you. That money moves from one place to another, from saver to borrower, and the bank simply facilitates the transfer. That assumption is almost entirely wrong. The truth is that the bank created that $300,000, not from a vault, not from another depositor. It created it as a new deposit in the act of making the loan. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is not fringe economics. It is how the modern banking system actually works. And it has been confirmed explicitly by central banks, including the Bank of England itself. Understanding how money is actually created and how the entire financial system is built on this mechanism is one of the most illuminating things you can learn about the world you live in, because it changes how you understand debt, inflation, interest rates, economic crises, and your own relationship with the banking system. I am Cindy, and today we are going to explain all of it. Let us get into it. Before we can understand how banks create money, we need to understand what money actually is, because the answer is more surprising than most people expect. Money is not gold. It has not been for a long time. In 1971, President Nixon ended the last link between the US dollar and gold, a decision known as closing the gold window. Since that moment, the US dollar has been what economists call a fiat currency. Fiat is a Latin word meaning "let it be done," meaning the currency has value because the government declares it has value, and because people collectively agree to accept it as a medium of exchange. There is no gold in Fort Knox backing every dollar in your wallet. The dollar is backed by something more powerful and more abstract: trust. Trust in the US government. Trust in the stability of the US economy. Trust in the legal system that enforces contracts denominated in dollars. And trust in the Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States, to manage the money supply responsibly. This might sound fragile, but it is actually the basis of every major currency in the world today. Every currency, the euro, the yen, the pound, the yuan, is a fiat currency. None of them are backed by physical commodities anymore. In the modern economy, money exists in three primary forms. Physical cash, the notes and coins in your wallet, makes up a surprisingly small portion of the total money supply. In the United States, physical cash in circulation is a fraction of the total money that exists in the economy. Commercial bank deposits, the numbers in your checking and savings accounts, make up the vast majority of the money supply. When you check your bank balance and see $5,000, that is not $5,000 sitting in a vault with your name on it. It is a number in a database, a liability on the bank's balance sheet, representing the bank's obligation to pay you $5,000 on demand. Central bank reserves, money that commercial banks hold at the Federal Reserve, are a third form of money that exists only between banks and the central bank. Regular people never interact with reserves directly. Understanding that most money is simply numbers in databases, not physical objects, is essential for understanding how banks create it. Most of us were taught, either in school or through general cultural osmosis, that banks work like this. People deposit money, banks pool those deposits, and then lend them out to borrowers. The bank is an intermediary, a middleman connecting savers with borrowers. This model is called the financial intermediation model. And while it sounds logical and is widely taught, it does not accurately describe how modern commercial banks actually operate. Here is the critical problem with the intermediation model. If it were true, banks could only lend out money that had already been deposited. Their lending would be limited by the savings of their depositors. But we know from observation that the total amount of loans in the economy vastly exceeds the amount of physical cash and initial deposits that exist. Something else must be happening. And that something else is money creation. The Bank of England, one of the world's oldest and most respected central banks, published a remarkably clear explanation of this in 2014. They stated directly that the majority of money in the modern economy is created not by the government or the central bank, but by commercial banks in the act of making loans. Let me say that again because it is important. Commercial banks create money when they make loans, not by moving existing money from one account to another, by creating new money, new deposits that did not exist before the loan was made. This is the mechanism at the heart of the modern financial system, and understanding it changes everything. So how exactly does this work? Let us walk through the mechanics step by step. You walk into a bank and apply for a $200,000 mortgage. The loan officer reviews your application, your income, your credit score, your assets, your debt-to-income ratio. They determine you qualify. The loan is approved. Here is what happens next in the bank's accounting system. The bank creates two simultaneous entries on its balance sheet. On the asset side of the balance sheet, it records a new asset, a loan receivable of $200,000. This represents your promise to repay the bank $200,000 plus interest over the life of the mortgage. Your promise, your IOU, is the bank's asset. On the liability side of the balance sheet, it records a new liability, a deposit of $200,000 in your account. This represents the bank's obligation to pay you $200,000 on demand. These two entries are created simultaneously. No existing money was moved from anywhere. No vault was opened. No other depositor's money was touched. The bank simply created a new asset and a new liability at the same moment, and in doing so, created $200,000 of new money that did not exist 5 minutes earlier. You then take that $200,000 and pay the seller of the home. The $200,000 moves to the seller's bank account, possibly at a different bank. The money now exists in the economy as a new deposit at that bank. This is money creation, new purchasing power, new money, generated by the act of lending. You might have heard of something called fractional reserve banking, the idea that banks are required to hold a fraction of their deposits as reserves and can lend out the rest. This model, while taught in many economics textbooks, is also not an accurate description of how modern banking works. In reality, banks do not lend out reserves. Reserves are used to settle payments between banks, not to fund loans. A bank does not check its reserve level before making a loan. It makes the loan first, and then manages its reserve position afterward, borrowing reserves from other banks or the central bank if needed. In March 2020, the Federal Reserve actually eliminated reserve requirements entirely for U.S. banks, reducing the required reserve ratio to 0. Banks in the United States are now legally required to hold 0 reserves against their deposits. This confirms definitively that reserves do not constrain lending in the way the textbook model suggests. What actually constrains bank lending is capital requirements, the amount of equity a bank must hold relative to its risk-weighted assets. This is a different constraint from reserves and works through a different mechanism. But the core point remains: banks create money when they lend, and the money supply in the economy expands every time a new loan is made. So if commercial banks create money by lending, what does the central bank do? And why does it matter? In the United States, the central bank is the Federal Reserve, often just called the Fed. The Fed was created by Congress in 1913 and has a dual mandate: maximum employment and stable prices, meaning low inflation. The Fed does not directly control how much money commercial banks create, but it influences it powerfully through several key tools. The most widely watched tool the Fed has is the federal funds rate, the interest rate at which banks lend reserves to each other overnight. When the Fed raises this rate, borrowing becomes more expensive for banks, and they pass that cost on to consumers and businesses through higher loan interest rates. Higher rates make borrowing more expensive, which reduces demand for loans, which slows money creation, which slows inflation. When the Fed cuts rates, borrowing becomes cheaper, stimulating loan demand, money creation, economic activity, and potentially inflation. This is why every Federal Reserve interest rate decision is watched so closely by financial markets. A rate change ripples through the entire economy, affecting mortgage rates, car loan rates, credit card rates, business borrowing costs, and ultimately employment and inflation. The Fed can also directly affect the money supply through open market operations, buying or selling government bonds in the open market. When the Fed buys bonds from banks, it credits those banks with reserves, expanding the reserve base. When it sells bonds, it removes reserves. During and after the 2008 financial crisis, and again during the COVID-19 pandemic, the Fed engaged in a massive program of bond buying called quantitative easing, purchasing trillions of dollars of government bonds and mortgage-backed securities to inject reserves into the banking system and push down long-term interest rates. One of the most important functions of the central bank is serving as the lender of last resort. If a commercial bank faces a crisis, a sudden loss of confidence, a run on deposits, it can borrow from the Fed to meet its obligations. This backstop is what prevents bank runs from becoming systemic financial collapses. The existence of the Fed as lender of last resort is one reason why the modern banking system can function with the money creation mechanism we described earlier. Banks can create money through lending, precisely because the central bank stands ready to provide liquidity if things go wrong. If banks are constantly creating new money every time they make loans, a natural question arises. Does all this money creation cause inflation? The answer is sometimes yes, sometimes no. And the relationship is more complex than most people assume. Inflation is a general increase in the price level across the economy. When more money chases the same amount of goods and services, prices tend to rise. This is the basic mechanism connecting money supply and inflation. When bank lending expands rapidly, as it did in the early 2000s housing boom, the money supply grows quickly. If that growth outpaces the growth of real economic output, the actual production of goods and services, inflation follows. But money creation does not automatically cause inflation. If the new money created by bank lending finances productive economic activity, new businesses, new infrastructure, new technologies that increase the economy's productive capacity, the money supply and real output can grow together without significant inflation. Inflation tends to result when money creation significantly outpaces real economic growth. When banks lend aggressively for speculative purposes, buying existing assets like real estate or stocks, rather than creating new productive capacity, the money creation inflates asset prices rather than consumer prices. This is what happened in the housing bubble of the mid-2000s. Understanding this relationship is important because it explains why central banks raise interest rates when inflation rises. Higher rates discourage borrowing, slow money creation, reduce demand, and bring inflation down. It also explains why central banks cut rates during recessions to stimulate borrowing, money creation, and economic activity. The money supply, interest rates, inflation, and economic growth are all connected through the money creation mechanism we have been describing. The Federal Reserve is constantly trying to calibrate this system, encouraging enough money creation to support economic growth while preventing the excess that leads to inflation. Okay, so we have covered how banks create money, what the central bank does, and how this connects to inflation. Now let us bring it back to what this means for your personal financial life. Debt is not just your problem. It is money. When you take out a loan, you are not just incurring a personal obligation. You are participating in the money creation process. Your mortgage, your car loan, your student loan, each of these created new money when they were issued. And when you pay them back, that money is effectively destroyed, removed from the money supply. This is not a reason to take on reckless debt, but it is a reminder that debt and money are two sides of the same coin in the modern financial system. The money in your bank account almost certainly originated somewhere in the chain as someone else's loan. Interest rates affect everything because the Federal Reserve controls the short-term interest rate environment, and that rate ripples through all forms of borrowing. Fed decisions directly affect your financial life. Your mortgage rate, your car loan rate, your credit card rate, your savings account yield, and the performance of your investments. Paying attention to the interest rate environment, whether rates are rising, falling, or holding steady, is one of the most practically useful things a financially aware person can do. Rising rates make debt more expensive and saving more rewarding. Falling rates make borrowing cheaper and can boost asset prices. Inflation erodes cash. Assets protect you. Because the money creation process means the money supply tends to grow over time. And because growth in the money supply contributes to inflation over long periods, holding too much of your wealth in cash is a reliable path to losing purchasing power. This is the foundation of the argument for owning real assets, stocks, real estate, businesses, rather than holding cash. Real assets tend to maintain or increase their value as the money supply expands. Cash does not. The banking system is designed in a way that makes holding long-term cash a losing strategy, and understanding why helps you make better decisions about where your wealth should be. Here is what I want you to take away from this video. The financial system is not a mystery. It is a mechanism, a complex one, but a comprehensible one. And the core of that mechanism is simpler than most people realize. Commercial banks create money when they make loans. The central bank influences how much money is created by setting the price of borrowing. And the balance between money creation and real economic growth determines whether inflation rises or falls. Understanding this does not just satisfy intellectual curiosity. It gives you a framework for understanding why mortgage rates just went up, why your savings account is suddenly paying more, why the stock market reacted to the Fed's latest announcement, and why inflation eroded your purchasing power over the past few years. The financial system was built by people who understood it deeply, and it operates most comfortably when the people it serves, you, do not understand it at all. Now you understand it. Use that understanding. If this video opened your eyes to something you never learned in school, hit that like button and share it with someone who has always wondered where money actually comes from. Subscribe to Cindy Explains, because every week we cover the financial and economic systems that shape your life, in plain language that actually makes sense. Drop in the comments, did you know banks created money before watching this video? I want to know where you started. I read every comment. Take care of your money. Nobody else will do it for you.